Okay, here we go. Be'ezrat Hashem. And something has changed since the last time I've seen you. I can tell you that. Yep. You know, I can. I don't know how to explain it, but I wouldn't say I see energy. I don't know what it is. Whatever. I have an intuition, a very strong intuition, and I can tell you something has shifted between the two of you since the last time I saw you in a good way. Yep. No, you're ready for the wedding. That's what it is. Well, not everyone's ready 2 weeks before the wedding, you know, maybe physically, not spiritually or mentally.
We also, because last time there was no sushi, we came prepared with being fully fed.
Okay, yeah, good thing this time as well. So Katie is watching, and Yael, and my mother, and Shena Batsheva, and Avital, and David, and everybody else who joins us afterwards. Be'ezrat Hashem. And we're getting very close to the end of lesson 30 in Likutey Moharan. Baruch Hashem. I didn't realize it was going to take this long. I actually started this lesson. It's really interesting. When my son Levi Yitzchak went to his first bar mitzvah lesson for reading the Torah, and now his bar mitzvah is in 2 months. So that was probably like 4 months ago. Yeah, he got his tefillin, and he's ready. Be'ezrat Hashem. So, before we begin, I just wanted to mention something. I don't know, because I was listening to it today. This song, Harbo Dabu. I don't know how to say Harbo Darbo. You know what I'm talking about? You probably didn't hear it. Because if you're not connected to Israeli culture, which is such an interesting thing, the family here that owns this house, they're very into Chabad and being here in Jerusalem, but they're not into Israeli culture at all. They're not connected to the Hebrew scene. And so this is a song that came out a few months after the war started by what I would call Israeli white trash. And not to put them down, but it really is like the low level of Israeli society, like gangster, kind of disgusting. There's a lot of profanity in this 2-minute and 29-second song. A lot of middle fingers being shoved up, and some of the profanity is in English, so it's pretty clear what it is. But it is basically a rally song to get the nation ready to wipe out Hamas. That's what the song is about. And the song is saying, you know, you guys don't know what you got yourselves into. The whole army is coming. And the guy is singing, you know, Givati's coming. And Shiryon, he has this phrase that goes, Shiryon. Now, I've listened to this song maybe 50 times, maybe more, and I'm amazed every time. I'm on the verge of crying every time I see this song. Now, why? And I watched it at least twice today. That's why I wanted to mention it. Rav Kook. What was Rav Kook's big idea? That he was basically excommunicated by Haredi society for was that the redemption, the Geula, would come through the secular Jews. That even they wouldn't even know that they're bringing it, but they would bring the redemption. Meaning that the state of Israel, which was created by secular Jews, would create the vessel to receive the final redemption. And of course it hasn't happened yet, but we do see a lot of people doing tshuva after this last war, after October 7th. And this guy and this woman that made up the song, it's a very powerful thing coming from like the lowest place in Israeli society. And I know from soldiers in Gaza, they sing the song, they play the song, and he also predicted in the song, he said, we're coming after Nasrallah, we're coming after Haniya, we're coming after Muhammad Deif, and then he said Abu Baklawa, whoever that was, I guess the guy that hands out the baklava to everyone. He's like, we're coming for you all. We're coming for you all. You think you messed with us? You have no idea what you messed with. And really, it's just fascinating to see that there are also amazing religious songs, and there's amazing, all kinds of songs that came out from this war, but I'd say that's the number one song. That is the powerhouse song that came out of this war, and it came from the strangest of all places. And my guess is, maybe, if this guy did tshuva, learned Torah, he might be a Rebbe, for all I know. I have no idea. It's fascinating how the inspiration comes from places you didn't expect. So last week, we're really getting towards the end now. We're at the end of Zion, Zion, Chet. The end of Chet, the beginning of Tet. There's Tet and there's Yud, and that's it. And we're going to go over Tet. We're going to finish it today, and Yud, there's very little left. Maybe we'll finish the whole lesson today. What we were talking about last week is that all of the prayers of the Jewish people come to the tzaddikim. Let's see. Od Yoter Tov. You're right. Yeah. El wrote from Harbu Darbu to Od Yoter Tov. Really, Od Yoter Tov. That's also one of the super songs from this war. Which, by the way, the version that everybody listens to is by also one of these guys who looks like Israeli white trash. But it was written by a Breslever guy. And his version isn't as good as the other guys. Also not nearly as popular. Like he has a few 100,000 views. This other guy has millions and millions of views. It fascinates me. There's also a song Matanot Ktanot by Rami, what's his name? Rami Kleinstein or something like that. And it's a song about him longing for Shabbos in his parents' house when he was growing up. He's a secular guy now. You know, when you have Israelis that are bringing in this connection to Judaism, connection to the land, the unity of the people, and it's coming from these secular places, you realize that Rav Kook had, there was something to what Rav Kook was saying. Okay, so we were talking last week about how all the prayers that everybody davens go to the tzaddikim. Which tzaddikim? Probably the tzaddikim like a Wi-Fi connection. The closest to you is the closest tzaddik to you is where the prayers go, and the tzaddik is able to hear the prayers. But prayers come with like kosher prayers and prayers that are mixed with confusing thoughts, doubts in Hashem's existence, doubting yourself, thoughts about transgressions, maybe things you shouldn't be thinking about when you're davening. And these also come to the tzaddik. So how does the tzaddik distinguish between the prayers that are the kosher prayers and the prayers that come to the tzaddik that are the not kosher prayers? And Rabbi Nachman said it's based on the azut. It's based on the audacity or the chutzpah that you have in the prayer. Because if you thought, you couldn't even pray if you didn't have azut, if you didn't have a little bit of chutzpah. Because you're saying, okay, Hashem is creating the whole world all the time with His speech. And if in 1 second He stopped speaking, the whole world disappear. And for Hashem, everything exists and anything can happen. And I have the chutzpah, me, a finite little know-nothing human being, to daven to Hashem. So just to daven, you have to have chutzpah. And of course, in order to receive the Torah, it says in Pirkei Avot that, a baishan lo lamed, I don't remember the exact quote, but a person that's scared of asking questions can't learn Torah. You have to have a little bit of chutzpah to learn Torah. But there's also azut, so there's azut kedusha, which is the holy chutzpah, and there's azut sitra cha, azut from the other side. For example, if somebody comes to you and they say, this whole thing about Judaism, it's all a big joke. Give me a break. You really think that God spoke to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai? Do you really think that the sea parted? You heard this comedian, I probably mentioned him before, Yochai Sponder. You've heard of him? He's on YouTube.
I think he comes up on my Facebook page. Funny Moroccan guy.
He says he's everything, whatever. Yeah. He's a very funny guy. So he's great. He's in Holland. He says, "Any Christians here?" Yeah, everyone's Christian. He said, "You guys really believe that Jesus walked on water? Come on. You ever heard such a stupid thing?" He said, "But we Jews, we know that Moses parted the sea." The guy is great. Anyhow, don't listen to him in Hebrew because it's full of profanity. In English, I guess he doesn't know enough or doesn't say it, whatever it is. So somebody comes and says, part the sea. Do you think God could do such a thing? Can God make a mountain that he can't move? If he can't make a mountain that he can't move, then he's not all powerful. Whatever. All of that is coming from azut de kedusha. Azut de sitoacha, of the negative energy. And I remember when I was an atheist for a long time, from like 13 to 20 something. That was a long time in those years. Those are like big years. And I had to convince myself to believe in God. And I remember arguing with many people. And one of the things that convinced me was feeling my heart rate. And I said, this is something that you can't stop. I have no control over. I can decide to hold my breath maybe for a very long time, not forever. But I can't stop my heart from beating. No one can stop their heart from beating. Like even through meditation, you're not going to stop your heart from beating. And what is the source that's making my heart beat? And nobody could explain it to me. And the only answer for me was God. Everything else could be explained. Why does this planet exist where it does? Because it happened to be that the rocks fell in these places and the distance was here and the sun and the moon and perfect for life, and that's why there's life here. Okay, I can accept that. But heart beating, that didn't make any sense. So you have to have a certain amount of chutzpah to daven to Hashem. That's where we left off. I'm just going to read the last section of that there. וזה בחינת אתה הקל עושה פלא הודעת בעמים עוזך. And this is from, where is it? From Tehillim. You are Hashem that makes wonders, and you brought wisdom to your nation through your power, through uzecha. Hashem yitbarach ose plaot לשנות את הטבע בעולם על ידי תפילות ישראל. Hashem does wonders in the world by changing the role of nature according to the davening of the Jewish people. And I told you this probably before. I went to this Mekuban, Aon Meshi Zahav, I think his first name is Aon, in Givat Shaul. An interesting guy. You think about Star Wars and like the big, what was it, Jabba the Hutt that sat there. So this guy is really overweight and he's missing some front teeth, but he's the real thing. The real thing. And also, I went to him many times over a very difficult time in my life when related to Parnassa, and I became friendly with him. So he told me something that really changed my life. He said, davening can change everything. Davening can change everything. I'd come to him, I'd show him my palm. He had this big magnifying glass. He'd look at my palm. It's funny, I'm looking at it because my chavuta reads palms, and they taught me all kinds of things. So that's interesting. And he'll look at your Teudat Zahut and tell you which day you were born and all this stuff, and some type of vision, because he could see things that I mentioned. He said to me, you're a chazan in a big shul. But no, you're not a chazan, you sing from your heart. You don't sing from your mouth, you sing from your heart. Oh wow, the davening there is amazing. Can I come? Where is it? This is what he did, like this progression. And I told him where it is. He says, it's too far away, I can't walk there. But how did he see that? He didn't see that in my palm. He didn't see that in my Teudat Zahut. So his point was, and he said it again and again, whatever he would tell you about what was going on in your life, he'd say, davening changes everything. And I come back 6 months later and he says, your davening is working. So here, Rabbi Nachman says the same thing. That Hashem does wonders by changing nature because of our davening. Shehem al yedei b'chinat azut. And where does our davening come from? It comes from this aspect of chutzpah kanal, as mentioned above. כי על ידי עזות דקדושה בהתערותה דלתתא, through our davening, through holiness, having chutzpah through holiness, it creates an inspiration from below. You know this idea. You can either get an inspiration from above. You go and you have a spiritual experience, you're inspired from above. A car almost hits you, you're inspired from above. You work yourself up into davening to Hashem, that's the inspiration from below. And that's much more powerful than from above because you can actually affect that. What happens from above happens whenever it happens, and it might not ever happen again. Mosifim kivyachol oz namala. So when a person gets the power, davens to Hashem, davens in an exciting way, builds a holy fire, and offers, in a sense, a sacrifice through the davening to Hashem, then it adds strength, as it were, upstairs. Va'az yoredet azut kedusha aleinu, and then the holy chutzpah comes down to us. And then it gives us the power to change nature. And we see that all the time, here in Israel, we see it all the time. How many things, al pi teva, according to nature, should never, ever have happened, including October 7th. Even hours after October 7th, I remember seeing a video from some officer in the army that was explaining the miracle that happened to us. And the guy was right, because now it's been proven again and again. I was amazed that hours afterwards he drew a map, he made this little video with his phone, and he said we were supposed to be attacked from every front. But Sinwar jumped the gun. And Hezbollah decided not to join the war. And Iran decided not to join the war. And Syria decided not to join the war. And everybody's like, not joining the war. But if they all joined the war, the way that the army responded to October 7th, who knows, it would have been a terrible tragedy. And it's a miracle. It's totally a miracle, and we've had miracle after miracle after miracle. And I don't know if you see that in Russia and Ukraine. I don't know. Maybe Putin's prayers are very holy. I don't think so. I think Stalin was worse than Putin, for sure. But I don't understand Putin. I think the guy is crazy. Okay. She'al yedei ze modia le'akum, and through us changing nature through our davening, then we show the non-Jewish nations, the Goyim, et azut kedusha shel Yisrael. We show them what is this holy chutzpah of the Jewish people, and that's why I thought about Charbo Darbo, the song, because the guy is sticking his finger in the camera all the time and saying, "Oi, oi, oi, we're coming for you, and I'm like, wow. Even though it's coming from like this low place, it's really, in a sense, azut kedusha shel Yisrael. How many thousands, maybe, who knows, hundreds of thousands of soldiers were inspired by this guy. It was just coming out through his soul. And I guess in a sense it was kind of a secular prayer. But it was definitely coming from Azut Kedusha Shel Yisrael, the holy chutzpah of the Jewish people. And then through this, the non-Jewish nations, the Goyim, see et haplaot shenaasim ba'olam al yedei tefilot Yisrael, the wonders that come about through the davening of the Jewish people. Al yedei zeh yodim kama gadol ha'azut kedusha shel Yisrael, and through this people will acknowledge how great is the holiness of the davening of the Jewish people. Sheyesh behem azut kazeh, that the Jewish people have this chutzpah. Litpalen v'la'asot plaot kanal l'shanot et ma'arechet kochavim ha'mazalot. To daven and to change nature, to do it in a wondrous way, to change the way that things are supposed to happen. V'an kein atzadik al yedei shero'eh ha'azut v'ha'torah, and therefore the tzaddik that sees the chutzpah and the Torah, klomar, that is to say, she'al yedei ha'torah hu ro'eh eze sug shel azut sheyesh la'adam, through the person's Torah learning, then he sees what type of chutzpah the person has. Ki im zachal Torah mikdusha, because if a person merits Torah in a holy way, siman sha'ayadalo azut kedusha, that's a sign that he had holy chutzpah. Ki im torato psolet gam be'olam hazeh, because if the person's Torah is not worth anything in this world, then he knows, then the tzaddik knows that the person got their chutzpah from the negative side, ולכן הצדיק רואה את הזהות של כל אחד ואחד, so the tzaddik sees the chutzpah of every single person, ועל ידי זה יודע, אחר כך, and through this he knows afterwards, שהוא מקבל את כל התפילות של ישראל, when he receives all of the prayers of the Jewish people, להכיר את תפילה שבלבלה אותו, מחימת מחשבות הזרות שיש בה. Then he knows which davening came to him and confused him and threw him off through the foreign thoughts that were in the davening. ומאיזה מהם בא, מי הוא זה שמתפלל אותה, על ידי זה יודע להוכיח אותו. And he also knows which person davened which prayer, and through this the tzaddik knows how to rebuke the person. וכפי המחשבות הזרות שקיבל ממנו, and through the foreign thoughts that the tzaddik received from the person, הוא יודע על מה וכיצד להוכיחו. He knows how and why to rebuke a person. So this is the point that he's saying here, that we're trying to get close to Hashem. If we go back to the beginning, and now we're going to go to the elders of Athens in just a second. I'm going to read it in English. If we go back to the beginning, what are we trying to get out of this lesson? We're trying to get closer to Hashem. In order to get closer to Hashem, it can only come through speech, because it's the only way that we have to communicate. But speech is limited. So the speech has to come from somebody who's a great teacher. The great teacher has to not just know Torah, the great teacher has to be able to give over complex ideas in simple words. And he also has to be soneh betza, which we talked about many times, which means it doesn't have to hate money, has to hate the desire for money. Which means that he's not connected to this physical world. Because if someone were to come to him and say, I'll give you $50 million if you drive on Shabbos and give me a Dvar Torah to a stadium, the guy will say, no, I can't do it, it's Shabbos. He says, 50 million, I'm making 100 million. He said, no, can't do it. That's disconnected from the money. So you have to be at least on that level, and all the more so on the lower level, that the way that you know that you're not connected to the money is when you're willing to give tzedakah. Give and give and give, and then you're not attached to the money. And we talked about many things along the way, but here we want the tzaddik, we want, in either it's the tzaddik coming through the teachings of Rabbi Nachman, for example, or whichever tzaddik it is that we have their teachings, or it's coming from a living tzaddik that's going to rebuke us and tell us, listen, you're doing this wrong. You're doing that wrong. You have to fix this, you have to change that. There are many videos of people coming to the Lubavitcher Rebbe where the Rebbe rebuked them, usually in a kind way. But the Rebbe, in the simplest way, if somebody would come and say, Rebbe, I donated a Chabad house in Los Angeles. He says, only one? Because but Rebbe was $25 million. He's like, no, and what's with the next one? So that's the Rebbe rebuking. And there's stories where the Rebbe had holy vision. Like there's a story of some guy that was there on Purim one year, and the Rebbe said, I want you to pledge $25 million or whatever it was. And he's like, I don't even have $2,000. He said, pledge it anyhow and give me the money. Make sure I get the money. And the guy made sure the Rebbe got the money, however he did it, borrowed it. I don't remember the story exactly, but what happened in the end is he got back a lot more money from that money that he gave. And the Rebbe knew at that moment he had to do it. So these are types of rebuke from the tzaddik. And what he's saying is it's essentially giving us a shortcut to getting closer to Hashem. Rabbi Nachman has a whole lesson where he says, listen, stop doubting what I'm saying. Just listen to me and do exactly what I say. And I'll save you a lot of trouble. Okay, you can't do that. You know, we were at a wedding a couple of nights ago. Looking forward to being at your wedding, Be'ezrat Hashem, very soon. And there are all these single people there. And, you know, I'm looking at them, and you can see they're watching their friends getting married. And the girls are crying. And the guys are looking around, checking out the girls. And I'm thinking, you know, there's so many young, beautiful people here. Just everybody marry each other. You all know each other. Just like, what's taking you so long? But it doesn't work like that. Okay, so here we go. Section Tet. This is the explanation of what the wise men of Athens asked. And the reason I'm reading it in English is because it's in Aramaic, and it's not so straightforward. And I figured we'll just go through it. And whatever we get from it, we get from it. Meishra de Sakina, a garden of knives. This is where we started off. So if we go back to, I'll just read the story in the beginning. How does one harvest a garden of knives? With a donkey's horn. Does a donkey have a horn? Is there a garden of knives? They brought 2 eggs and said to him, this is the elders of Athens coming to Rabbi Yoshua ben Chanina. They brought him 2 eggs and they said, which one is from the white pair and which from the black pair? Meaning, which is from a white chicken and which is from a black chicken. He brought 2 cheeses, I guess feta cheese. He said, which one is from the white goat and which one is from the black goat? And that's where we started. And then he says in the beginning and at the end of this lesson, and this is what we covered, but we covered this with the Otei Or, so even twice this, it's going to be explained. So when it says a garden of knives, that alludes to the lower level of wisdom, which is malchut. Because a garden of knives is study, is learning Torah. As Onkelos translates it, I've repeatedly learned. This corresponds to a vengeful sword, which is the aspect of malchut. So you can see, even with the translation, it's not so easy to understand. What he's trying to do here is he took this story, he's trying to say, I actually built this whole lesson, this is Rabbi Nachman is saying, I actually built this whole lesson based on the story. Meshra, which is the, Rashi translates this as auga, a patch. This corresponds to the screams of one who rules, as is written. Okay, so I don't think we're really getting anything out of this. I'm going to just skip this. Anyhow, you should know it's here. I'll read the commentary afterwards. Yeah, I went over all this for a long time, but I realized it's just Rabbi Nachman. We're not really going to get anything out of it. Just Rabbi Nachman reviewing the lesson and saying that, here, I'm going to prove to you that the beginning wasn't just for nothing. I wish there was a summary in a smaller way here. Oh, there is something here, 1 second. Okay, let's just go over the very quick review here. Perceptions of godliness, upper intellect, must be contracted in order for them to be grasped. This necessitates a very, very great teacher who is able to explain and transmit perceptions of godliness to those who have faith in him, meaning it's not a capitalized him, so it's either Hashem or the teacher. He does this by drawing the upper intellect through channels, through the Torah and mitzvot, so as to enclose it in the lower intellect. A person cannot attain the lower intellect unless they despise monetary gain. Having attained lower intellect, they have to draw vitality to it through joy from the mitzvot, the 3 festivals. When the lower intellect, malchut, falls into the exile of the 4 malchuyot of the other side, one needs chesed to cut it and free it from there. Chesed is revealed when a true tzaddik offers rebuke, thereby revealing Torah teachings, perceptions of godliness. This rebuke ought to be accepted even if it engenders humiliation. How can the tzaddik know which person needs rebuke? Through holy boldness. This boldness is the Torah manifests in one's prayers. Okay? So that's a review of the whole lesson. Now, at the end of the reviewing the elders of Athens, there's a little addition here. Mosif Reb Natan, and Reb Nassan adds, Zot Torah hitchin Rabbeinu Zan, this Torah that Rabbi Nachman began, Lomar al pasuk bereshit vayihi miketz, that is, it started off with a verse from the parsha of Miketz, Ach lo siyem leve'er ze hapasuk al pi Torah azot. But he didn't explain what's the connection to the parsha after he went through this whole Torah. V'amar chalkach, and he said afterwards, she'im haya rotzeh lesayem perush hapasuk, if he wanted to get to the point where he explains the connection to the verse, haya tzarich lomar od Torah kazot kedei leve'er hapasuk, he'd have to give a whole other long Torah in order to explain the connection. Okay, so now we're just going to go to Yud. We're going to finish Yud. It's this little paragraph here, and the end. You probably have almost the same thing there. So let's just read the introduction quickly. La'achar shebi'er she'atzadik mekir lefi atfila kol adam et azut. So this is just a review of what we said. So we're not going to go over that. That the tzaddik knows each person according to the chutzpah in their davening, whether it comes from the holy side, it comes from the opposite side. Mikolo shel adam yecholin leda et bchinat hamalchut shelo. From a person's voice, the tzaddik can know what is the level of malchut that person has. So everybody has a certain level of malchut. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, for example, has probably, on a scale of 1 to 100, he has 100. He's at the highest level of malchut. And you see it even after, I don't know how many years it's been, 30 years since the Rebbe passed away. His impact just grows and grows and grows. That's malchut. Malchut, you'll also see it expressed in certain people. They walk into a room and people just want to give them respect. Respect in general, how you carry yourself, how you look at yourself. All of these things come through a person's malchut. And the malchut is based on their mazel. It's based on the mazel, which means luck, but really what it means is what are the attributes that this person was born with. Certain people are born with, everybody's met people that are introverts and extroverts and super extroverts and super introverts. We had a chief of staff who just retired, thank God, who was a super introvert. That's like the worst personality for the chief of staff to win the harshest war we've ever had in this country. It's just not the right person. So, but it's not his fault. He's just born that way. So that's what he's saying here. Everybody's born with their mazel and everyone's born with their malchut. Ki yesh bechol echad ve'echad b'chinot malchut. Everybody has their aspect of malchut. V'hu nikar b'kolo, and it's expressed through a person's voice. Ki ein shnei kolot shavim. Nobody has two of the same voices. Ki kol shen kol echad ve'echad meshuneh v'chavero. Every person's voice is different from their friend. And so a person can be acknowledged or recognized through their voice, as we know. Right? People have distinct voices. The person's voice expresses what the person is. Ki adam im mezeg chalash, kolo yeh chalash. If a person has a weak personality, a weak character build, then their voice will be weak. Right? If a person's weak, there's a guy in Bateran. Wow, this guy, he's like this. It's amazing. He comes over and says, "Can I ask you something?" He also keeps his eyes closed all the time. "Can I ask you something?" Oh, I feel so bad. I know most of the times you need tzedakah, so I say, if I give you 50 shekels, is that okay? Oh, thank you. It's so weak. So that's what he's saying. If somebody is weak, then their voice is going to be weak. Adam im mezik chazak, yellow, kol chazak, and a person that's a strong person will have a strong voice. The kol shinoi hakolot hem kafi mezik shel adam. And all of the changes in a person's voice are according to a person's characteristics. And through a person's voice, you can distinguish the level of malchut that a person has. Ki yesh kol anot gvura, v'kol anot chalusha. There's a strong voice, there's a weak voice. Yesh kol she gvura v'nitzachon, sheyesh kol shel chulsha v'efsed. There's a voice of power and victory, and there's a voice of weakness and loss. And this is according to whatever type of malchut everyone has. Ki malchut va'ashirut nikeret al yedei hakol va'dibur. Because a person's malchut and also their wealth is recognized through their voice. Right? People that are very wealthy, they carry themselves with the feeling that they're worth something, and you feel it in their voice many times. Not always for good things. Uksheyesh la'adam memshala an davar konshehu, when a person has rules over something, kagon shel ashirut or chafetzav, like their wealth or their possessions, as shu omer umetzaveh ech litnaheg behem. And then when a person says how you should behave in that way, for example, when Warren Buffett says how to invest money, then people listen to him. And why are they listening to him? Because his authority is coming through his voice. Kolo chazak, his voice is strong, even if it's not physically strong. Also, for example, the Lubavitcher Rebbe didn't have a strong physical voice, but the words that he said were powerful. and his malchut came through his voice. Ve'oz kederech kol shel moshel, and then a person has the strength and the voice of like a dictator or a ruler. B'chinat kol anut gvura, and then it has the powerful voice. Avan mi she'eino memshala oto davar, but a person that doesn't have ownership over that thing, shehu omer lo eze dibur alav, when somebody says something, they don't carry the authority. B'kol chalash v'namuch, and he says in a low voice. And that's the low voice. V'ankein Shaul haya rodef et David al shera'a bo sheyimloch. You know, Shaul tried to kill David many times because he knew that David was prophesied to become the king. Matzinu sham b'mikra, we find in the Tanakh, kshe-nizdamnu yachad Shaul and David, when there was a chance that Shaul had, I guess, to attack David, Amar lo Shaul David, he said to David, Hakolcha ze b'ni David. Your voice is the voice of my son David. V'hakavana b'pnimiyut, and the Hasidic interpretation of this is she'evin Shaul b'kol shel David, that Shaul understood from David's voice, shu chazak mebchinat malchut, that he carries a great deal of malchut. V'zeu siman lekach, and this is a sign for this, she'David omed limloch, that David is going to become the king. V'sha'ala David, and he asked David, Hakolcha ze b'ni David, is this your voice, my son David? V'tama Shaul an kolo shel David, and Shaul was surprised at the voice that he heard coming out of David. Ki yivin shehu kol shel melech mamish, because he heard that it was the king. It was a king's voice, literally. V'an kein ratza Shaul laset et kolo, and then he wanted. What did Shaul want to do? Laset et kolo. What does that mean? He wanted to lift up his voice. So Shaul wanted a voice like David. He wanted to be able to give that power out of his voice. Also, by the way, the king, when a king gives an order, it's called dabar. And dabar from dibur, from speech, because the king rules through his speech. And the king doesn't really have any power on his own. He's just sitting there on the top of the pyramid. But when he says something, the speech carries authority. The authority follows down through the chain of command, and what he says makes things happen. But if he didn't have that authority, nobody would listen to him, and the king would be worthless. What's the phrase? Ein melech bli am. There's no king without a nation. Dahainu lahagbiat kolo lamala mikol shel David. That is, he wanted to have a stronger voice than the voice of David. Ki kechon sheyesh la'adam yoter b'chinat malchut, because the more malchut that a person has, kach hu yochol lahagbia yoter et kolo, the louder his voice can get, or I would say really the further distance his voice carries. Aval lo haya yachol, but he wasn't able to do this. Shaul, ki kfar ibed Shaul et malchut, because Shaul already lost his malchut. V'nigzar she'ta'avo malchut el David, and it was decreed in heaven that the malchut would go from Shaul to David. V'zeh katuv sham b'siyum pasuk, and this is what it says in the end of the verse. V'yisa Shaul et kolo, what is that? Vayivak. What is it? What is vayiv? That he cried? Mm-hmm. So Shaul raised up his voice, and there was the voice of crying. Dahainu sheratza latzeit u'lagbia kolo kanan, that is, when to raise up his voice, as mentioned above. Aval haya kol nivke chalash v'namuch, but his voice was weak and crying and weepy. Zebchinat how do you say it? Vayevk. Very good. Vayevk. It's written here, but it's hard to say. Vayevk. Shaya kol nivke, that he had a whiny voice, a crying voice. Kol namuch shem b'chia, that he had a low voice of crying. V'anken amar Shaul az, and David, and then he said to David, Yadati ki mloch timloch maloch timloch, I knew that you were going to rule. Ki yada Shaul kol ze al yedei akol shel David kanal, because Shaul knew all of this through David's voice. And how does that connect back to the beginning? Because the voice is the only way for us to connect to Hashem. and through the voice of the teacher, and through our own voice through davening, and through the inner voice that leads to an inspiration from below to above, that's how we come closer to Hashem. Shkoyach, that took us only like 4 months. I feel like we should do a siyum or something. Okay, so I have a story that I get lunch from Chumash Tchina sometimes. I don't eat the pitot, so I bring them back home. I left them in my office. I also left the story in my office. Shows you what a rush I was in to get here. But I do remember the story. So, Reb Meir Premishlan, who I was amazed to discover that besides the Baal Shem Tov, the most stories that I have on the podcast are about Reb Meir Premishlan, who I never really heard about before I started telling these stories. And he was a great tzaddik, there's no question. And there's great stories about Reb Meir Premishlan. What's with my glasses here? I'm going to fix that. And so there was some poor chassid that came to Reb Meir and said, I don't have any money for Purim. It's Purim, I don't have any money. Chaya and Joe are joining us. Shalom Lechem. They don't have any money for Purim. So the Rebbe gives him a couple of kopeks, a few pennies. And he says, may Hashem do a miracle for you for Purim. And so the guy's walking around and he doesn't know what kind of miracle is supposed to happen. He passes by a tavern, and next to the window are these Jewish businessmen, and they see this schlepper. And they say to him, hey, come in. So he comes in, they say, see this big bottle of wine? Nobody's able to drink this whole bottle of wine. If you drink it down to last drop, we'll give you enough money, you'll be able to have Purim for many years. So this is a guy that barely drank wine for Kiddush. He for sure couldn't handle a whole bottle of wine, but he starts drinking. Before he knows it, he finishes the whole thing. And these guys look at him like no human being could finish that much wine. And they give him all this money. And he realizes that he's not drunk from the wine. It was like drinking grape juice for him. And he comes home, he's in a great mood. And he, of course, has the Suda and gives matanot le'evyonim, gives tzedakah to the poor, and all of that. And he has an incredible Purim. Then a couple of days later, he goes to Reb Meir Premishlan. He says, Rebbe, I don't understand what happened. You gave me a couple of coins. You said a great miracle should happen, and a great miracle happened. I drank this whole jug of wine, and not only did I not get drunk, I got rich from it. He said, what is this? So the Rebbe said, on Purim, tzaddikim like him are able to see in heaven things that they can't see during the whole year. And he said that he saw that there was money for him waiting if he would just drink that bottle of wine. And he said, see, you didn't get drunk on the wine. You got drunk on Purim. Because you got drunk on Purim, the miracle worked for you, and you didn't need to get drunk from the alcohol, and all of the brachas came through. So B'ezrat Hashem, that's my blessing to everyone. Sure, get drunk on wine if you need to, wine or vodka, whatever it is. But if you can really reach the level of getting drunk on Purim, that's the highest. B'ezrat Hashem, everyone should have an amazing Purim. And then when we come back, we're going to start with much smaller lessons. That's it for the big lessons for a while, maybe even for a long time. B'ezrat Hashem, and then we're getting ready for the wedding. And we're getting ready for Pesach.